All right. Okay. So this next article super important. I kind of want to spend some time on this article. This was sent to me. This was originally a one of those like Tyler Durden kind of zero hedge articles, but it was a mirror from this website. So I preferred the original sources, which is why I'm not linking to zero hedge. So this is from the Gatestone Institute International Policy Council. Now I want to spend a little bit of time on this because this is super important. France's no-go zones. The riots return. So quote, a few months ago, a police officer, Noam Anour, who infiltrated Islamist circles, stated that no-go zones in France are now foreign enclaves on French territory. The gangs operating there, he wrote, have formed a parallel economy based on drug trafficking. They consider themselves at war with France and with Western civilization. They act in cooperation with Islamist organizations and define acts of predation and rampage as raids against infidels. He noted that reclaiming these areas today would be complicated, costly, and involve calling in the army. For years, successive French governments have chosen a policy of willful blindness. They simply behave as if they do not see what is going on. They do not even try to find solutions. And then it goes into, so basically there's a young man, well, I'll just quote. I'm not even going to try to summarize because there's just so much information. A young man rides a motorcycle at high speed and hits the door of a police car. He breaks his leg. He is sent to the hospital. He does not have a driver's license, but does have a long criminal history. He was sentenced several times by the court for drug trafficking, robbery, and violence and sexual assault. As soon as the news of the accident is released, hostile messages about the police circulate on social media, and in a dozen cities in France, riots break out. The riots continue for 5 days in a row. A police station in Strasbourg is attacked and set on fire. A school is nearly destroyed a few miles from, French town. Rather than responding with firm language, the French government is saying that an investigation into the behavior of the police has been opened and that the officers will most likely be punished. The coronavirus pandemic, which struck France hard, has been aggravating the serious problems already plaguing the country. France's general population remains under extremely strict lockdown. The police have been ordered to enforce the rules ruthlessly. Permits to leave one's home were limited to 60 minutes, once a day, and no farther than half a mile. On April 23rd, Minister of Interior Christophe Castaner said, since the start of the lockdown, more than 915,000 citations have been handed out. 15.5 million persons have been stopped and checked. The citations, according to newspapers, were given to people who stayed outside for more than an hour or who went beyond the authorized limits. People living in no-go zones are treated differently. Police officers have been told by the government not to stop them at all and to avoid as much as possible going near where they live. Quote, the government knows that a large-scale uprising could happen and that a minor incident might be enough to set the powder keg ablaze. Therefore, police officers have unwritten instructions. They must avoid incidents at all costs. If an incident occurs, they know that the government will blame the police and no one else. The choice of the government is easy to explain, he said. The police would not have the material or the manpower to calm a large uprising. He compared the current condition to the riots in October 2005, added that the situation in France today is quite different. In 2005, no-go zones existed, but they were not numerous, fewer than 100, and were located in the suburbs of the largest cities in the country. The police could still enter them. Gangs and radical Islamist imams did not yet control them. Today, there are more than 750 no-go zones in France, and police enter them only by carefully preparing commando-like operations beforehand. Gangs and radical imams seem totally in control. In 2005, the riots had begun with the death of 2 young men. They had been trying to escape from the police and taken refuge in an electric power substation, where unfortunately they were electrocuted. Today, a simple traffic accident involving the police can lead to nights of destruction and looting. In 2005, the police tried to quell the riots unsuccessfully for 3 weeks. The country seemed to be on the verge of civil war. Today, because members of the government seem to believe that if riots occur, a civil war really could happen, the police are asked not to intervene and to stand aside until the destruction stops. In July 2018, riots lasted almost a week. They broke out in Nantes. While the public library and other buildings burned down, the police remained invisible. 8 months later, in March 2019, when riots lasted 3 days, broke out in Grenoble and hundreds of shops and cars were totally destroyed, the police again remained invisible. In 2005, the people living in no-go zones were hostile to France. Today, their hostility has increased. A few months ago, a police officer, Noam Anor, that's like the beginning of the article. It was repeating it. Anyway, it goes on. I think that's all the good shit. Okay, here's the after the attack of Charlie Hebdo, it's now commander-in-chief noted this at the end of the article. France is living hours of disillusionment as deep as those who had known in May 1940. Before our eyes, everything collapsed at an unimaginable speed. We will have to ask the question, why such a disaster? How was this possible? And the present catastrophe inevitably brings us back to the same conclusion. Incompetence, disorganization, lack of long-term vision, improvisation, in summary, the nullity of our leaders. 2 months of lockdown, the author Eric Zimmer said on CNews TV, will lead to an unprecedented economic crisis and probably to a very serious explosion of violence. It is high time to face reality. France is on the brink of chaos. All right.
You know what? You really like. Well, let me just start off real quick. You addressed this last night, and I think that this is going to be like the test case, the canary in the coal mine. France is going to have a decision, and they're basically in checkmate. If they grease all of these Muslims, they're Hitler.
Yep.
If they don't, their country dies.
Yep.
One or the other. They have no other options.
No,
so
but they don't have that option. They can't grease them. If the French government decided to bring in the army and crack down on these no-go zones, they become Hitler. The entire international community, including America, including everyone, like basically, you know what it's like? The homeless people in California. You have the people who have to deal with the homeless shit and heroin needles on the street, and they beg the government to do something about the homeless. But the people who don't see the homeless, who don't see the shit and the heroin needles all over the floor, they can virtue signal about how the homeless are people and how dare you mistreat them and it's so bad. And they outvote the people who are suffering from the homeless shit and heroin needles everywhere, whose businesses are being shut down because these homeless people are sleeping on the street and scaring their customers away. So when the people who don't have to feel the pain caused by this problem can virtue signal and outvote the people who do, they do. Now, France, even though they're supposedly a sovereign country, they're really not. The rest of the so-called international community will come down like a fucking 10-ton hammer if they dare do anything about these no-go zones, because they'd literally be Hitler.
And they would lose not only their economy but their country.
Yeah, so no, they're completely fucked. And how do I know that the international community would do this? Because this literally is the story of Rhodesia and South Africa. So you had the Boer who came to South Africa, depopulated by the Zulu. They didn't steal the land from anyone. There was no one living there. They were all wiped out by the Zulu. They built a country there. All these Africans immigrated to South Africa because there were jobs there. And the South Africans, they didn't want to lose control of the country they founded. And so they had a two-tiered system, very similar to Rome, where they had the patricians and the plebeians, and only the patricians could run the country because they were the ones who founded Rome. So the Boer were like the patricians, and the black Africans, they were like the plebeians. And so the whites wanted to keep control of the country they built. They didn't want the black immigrants to come in and take it over and destroy it. And the entire international community came down like a fucking 10-ton hammer and forced these countries to basically let the blacks vote and give them equal say and equal power and equal democracy. And immediately the country was taken over by black communists, and they destroyed the country immediately. Everything the Boer said would happen immediately happened. And so then no one cared. When the Boer were warning them, if you let these black communists take over, they will destroy this country. They're like, do it anyway, my principles. And then when they did destroy the country and started murdering white people, when they're like, you going to help us? They're like, nope, that's racist. Die. So that's what will happen to France. The exact same scenario. If France tries to take power back from these no-go zones, they will be denounced by America and by the entirety of Europe in the Western world as being racist, it's apartheid, it's Hitler, so on and so forth. France literally cannot do that. They don't have the power. They are completely under the thumb of the EU and America, and they will not allow them to defend the sovereignty of their country. Their only choice is to maintain the peace until the pain has been spread. Like if homeless people run around raiding these gated communities and raping people's families, then people would somehow wake up and realize the homeless problem has gotten out of control. But as long as it's only affecting these people over here, and I can live in my gated community, and I can just think happy thoughts and be isolated from the problem, then I can virtue signal about my principles. But then when the pain hits me, then I'm going to say, fuck that. That's the problem. So France is fucked. They have no choice. Their hands are totally tied. All they can do is just hope that maybe when enough countries have felt their pain, they'll wake up too, and they'll give them permission to do what needs to be done. But France is way farther along than these other countries. So, no, France has no future. Like, go ahead and go to France. Like, seriously, go to the Louvre, go to the Eiffel Tower, take pictures, because it won't be there soon. When the Muslims take over, they will burn all of that down, because that's what they do everywhere they go. You look at Afghanistan. They literally destroy everything that isn't them and burn everything to the ground, destroy all the libraries, destroy all the museums. They completely wipe out all culture and kill everyone. That's what's going to happen to France. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop it, because otherwise you're Hitler.